we're going to answer the question about the volume of a rectangle wall with an opening. And in case you haven't worked with concrete, this is a real life problem because you have to call the concrete truck company and tell them how many cubic feet or cubic meters or cubic yards of concrete you need them to bring out to build your wall. So this is a very real life problem. So if the length, which is this dimension, we'll call it L. Here's where my wall ends. Tried to make a three-dimensional drawing. If my length is 1.2 times the height, so this is my height, so my length is 1.2 times the height. And the width, that would be this dimension, how far back it goes. This is your width. Our width is, that's an equal sign, 1/4 or 0.25 times the height. Now, it said the height and length of the opening. So maybe this opening doesn't go all the way to the ground. So maybe we should close it off here and make this part of our wall. Here's our wall, and here's our opening. So this is still part of our wall. Whoops. Yeah, this is part of our wall. This is the front face. It says the height and length of the opening. So we're going to call this a small h to be the height of the opening, whereas a big H is the height of the wall. And the length of the opening, so this is going to be a small L for the length of the opening, where a capital L is the length of the whole wall, are 1/3 of the measures for H and L. So this little h here is 1/3 of our big H, and this little L here is 1/3 of our big L. And so the width stays the same because the wall is the same. You want the wall to be the same width. So let's make two volumes. If we do a volume of the whole wall, assuming no opening, well, that's length times width times height. Length times width times height. And that is, our length is 1.2 times the height. That's our length. Our width is 0.25 times our height. And our height is just our height. So that's the whole thing if we didn't have an opening. And we can simplify that to 1.2 times 0.25 is 0.3 h times h times h is h squared. Now, if we do the volume of the opening, just the opening, which we're going to have to subtract off from the whole, well, that's little length times the same width times little h. So that gives us little l is 1/3 of big L, and W hasn't changed, and H is 1/3 of big H. Now, it would help us to get everything in H's, like volume of the whole thing is in H's. So this is 1/3 we learned that L was 1.2H. And we learned that W was 0.25H. And we have little h, which is 1/3 h. So now we're going to have everything in h times h times h, which is h cubed. But let's figure out this constant. We have 1/3 times 1.2 times 0.25 times 1/3. So this ends up being 1/30 h squared, h cubed. As a decimal, that's 0.0333, basically the threes repeat, times h squared, h cubed. Now, this is the opening that we have to subtract off. This is the hole. And so here's part, oh, look at this. We already did part A. This is part A. This is an equation for the whole volume. Determine the amount of concrete needed for the height of the opening to be 2 feet. Well, look at that. They gave us some help here. So if our height here is 2 feet, so let's make this 2 feet. Then we'll multiply both sides by 3 to solve this. And we find that the actual h for this part is 3 times 2 is 6 feet. So now our hole is going to be 0.3 times 6 feet cubed. And our opening is going to be, I like 1/30 better because it's not an approximation, 1/30 times 6 feet cubed. And then we have to subtract these. And that's the amount of concrete we need. So if we go 0.3 times 6 cubed, this is 64.8 cubic feet. And if we go 1 divided by 30 and then times 6 cubed, this is 7.2 cubic feet. And then we subtract those and find that the amount of concrete needed for the height of the opening to be 2 feet for B here, we find that it is 64.8 minus 7.2. This is 57.6 cubic feet. And the units are important. So this is the answer to B. Now, for C, what is the height, length, and width if you order a load of concrete of 1,500 cubic feet? So now we're going to take our whole amount, which is 0.3 h cubed, minus the opening, which is 1/30 times h cubed. And that's going to have to equal 1,500 cubic feet. And so we solve this. We have 0.3 minus 1 divided by 30. So this is 0.2667 h cubed equals 1,500. And then we divide 1,500 by this 0.2667 in order to get h cubed by itself. So now we have that h cubed is 5,625 cubic feet. Now, to undo a cube, you take the cube root. And we, on our calculators, if I do the cube root of h cubed, usually there's a button on your calculator, I'll get that the height is the cube root of this. And the cube root of 5,625 is 17.78 feet. Remember, I took the cube root, so we're back to feet. So the answer here to part C is that the height is 17.78 feet. Now, if the length is 1.2 times that, we'll take that times 1.2 and find that the length is 21.34 feet. And the width is 0.25 times the height. So we go back to our 17.78 and multiply it by 0.25. And so our width is 4.45 if we're rounding feet. And that's all the answers.